Now, with all the latest stories making the headlines this evening, it's the ITV News at 10.
Clear rules of engagement for the Tory leadership contest have been laid down, but that certainly doesn't mean it won't be a bloody and gruelling contest. As Liz Truss joined those seeking to become Prime Minister, the chairman of the 1922 committee laid out a timetable to choose a new leader by the end of summer.
Certainly we should have a conclusion and a new leader of the party elected and announced on the 5th of September.
We'll take a close look at the pitch by the main candidates to see what, if anything, distinguishes them. Also in News at 10 tonight. A risk to life, warnings to take precautions as the searing heat wave could see unprecedented temperatures across the country. Bankrupt Sri Lanka's frustrated people say they'll continue to occupy the presidential palace until the entire government is gone.
The fact we, along with these people, can walk through this palace at our leisure tells us power in Sri Lanka no longer lies in the hands of the president, but it's not yet in the hands of the people.
Despite already cancelling tens of thousands of flights to protect key holiday routes, BA is forced to suddenly pull more flights as airports warn of more disruptions this summer.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. The rules of engagement were tonight laid out for the contest which will grip the Conservative Party this summer. And if the early exchanges are anything to go by, it's unlikely to be a clean fight for the keys to number 10. With a crowded field and a need to get on with it, the bar was raised for those with lofty ambitions. Candidates will need the backing of 20 Tory MPs by tomorrow night in order to be on the ballot, significantly higher than previously. The final two could be known by this time next week, and the winner on September the 5th. That's 8 weeks today. And of course, a lot can change before then, but tonight one poll of Tory grassroots activists made Penny Mordaunt their favourite. And what of the man they want to replace? Well, today, Boris Johnson was keeping tight-lipped about who he would support.
The route to electing a new Tory leader. It's easy enough to get a bit lost. Sir Graham Brady, shop steward of Conservative MPs, turned up at 7:30 to announce the complicated process for replacing Boris Johnson as Prime Minister.
The 1922 executive met this afternoon, and I have since met with the board of the Conservative Party, and we have agreed the way forward for the leadership election.
Sir Graham announced that ballot nominations open and close tomorrow. Leadership candidates need the backing of at least 20 MPs to go into the first round of voting that will take place on Wednesday and will knock out the candidate who comes bottom and anyone with fewer than 30 votes from Tory MPs. The second round will happen on Thursday, and the plan is that the final knockout round will be on Monday, when today's 11 candidates should be reduced to just 2. The threshold for being one of the winning 2 will be 120 votes. At that point, the 2 winners will have to take part in around a dozen hustings around the UK to face the judgment of party members who will vote over the summer so that the new Tory leader and Prime Minister will be announced on the 5th of September. Are you comfortable that Boris Johnson will remain as caretaker till September the 5th?
This is a simple constitutional principle in this country. A Prime Minister remains Prime Minister until there is a successor. So that's not my responsibility. We are dealing with our responsibilities as quickly as we reasonably can.
That was a hint. Sir Graham is not altogether happy that the membership vote will run for weeks and weeks. And what about the requirement that any candidate has to have a minimum of 20 backers? Some will say that you're discriminating against the lesser-known candidates.
What we try to do is find a balance where we're making sure the parliamentary stages are concluded reasonably rapidly before the summer recess.
So there they are, the 11 in the beauty parade. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Tom Tugendhat, Nadeem Zahawi, Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid, Grant Shapps and Reman Chishti.
Well, I think we need a speedy timetable, frankly, because the country's going through a really difficult period. We need the new leader and a new government in place as soon as possible, because frankly for months we have spent too much time talking about Westminster and what goes on there and not enough time talking about the challenges that people are facing out in the country.
and one of the contenders was clear what's at stake.
Our party has lost its way. While families are limiting their weekly shop, politicians are getting caught up in arguments over who knew the latest sleaze allegations and when. And this isn't just bad for the country, it's catastrophic for the Conservatives.
Now that he's off, it's not him under the microscope. Who's he backing?
You know, I wouldn't want to damage anybody's chances by offering my support.
After all the rows and warring in the government, they haven't sent in the men in white coats. This Prime Minister will be in place all summer long unless something else goes wrong. Surely not. Robert Peston, News at 10.
Well, as we tried to keep count of the candidates, their own maths was questioned by opponents from inside and outside of the party. A variety of pledges to cut taxes brought accusations that they were pure fantasy, the re-emergence of the fabled magical money tree. So just what do each of the runners stand for, and what, if anything, separates them? Well, today we heard a little more from some of them on their pitch to become Prime Minister.
Let me tell you a story.
I want to seize the opportunity to be the next Prime Minister.
We need to deliver, deliver and deliver.
I can deliver. I can communicate.
It's time for a clean start.
And I'm ready to serve.
If you want to be Conservative leader, you might need a video and something to say on
low taxes.
Let's cut the tax.
That means lower taxes.
Tax, the issue dominating in week one, with candidates turning their fire on increases when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. Tomorrow he'll launch his campaign saying, once we have gripped inflation, I will get the tax burden down. It is a question of when, not if. Others say it's a question for now, not promising to wait on inflation. With this from Nadeem Zahawi.
As Prime Minister, I will cut the base rate of income tax to 19p in 2023, 18p in 2024.
There were tax cuts from Penny Mordaunt, Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who said fiscal headroom and efficiencies would now let him scrap the national insurance rise he backed.
If you knew, as you say in here, that there was a miracle fix to all of this, why didn't you mention it to the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak?
At the time the decision was made on the national insurance levy, I did not know that we'd be having 10% inflation.
You knew about that in April when the policy came in.
Just before the policy came in, there was another announcement that something like, I think 70% of people that would have paid the levy would be exempted from it. So it's legitimate to ask, why have the levy in the first place if you're all of a sudden unexpectedly exempting so many people? I think it complicates the tax system. It's unnecessary.
Patriotism is featuring heavily as well, with carefully chosen venues honouring Tory leaders of the past. Expect culture wars too. Suella Braverman not the only candidate to wade into the debate over trans rights. Her plea today?
Don't vote for me because I'm a woman. Don't vote for me because I'm brown. Vote for me because I love this country and because I would do anything for it.
On tax cuts, critics pointed out they don't help the very poorest. But in Tiverton, Tory members said the focus must be on those in need to win back the seat.
They've got to look at the conditions of the ordinary person.
We've got to look after people. That's what we're here for, to looking after people in the best way that we can.
And for voters?
You need somebody that you can trust, don't you?
That word, trust again. Ecclestone, News at 10.
And Robert joins me now. You've got a very busy summer ahead of you, to say the least. Now, we've got this Conservative Home poll of grassroots activists that says that Penny Mordaunt is in the lead at the moment, but there's a hell of a long way to go, isn't there?
Well, there is. I mean, let's be absolutely clear. She won't face Conservative members and activists unless she gets through these parliamentary rounds, which may end on Monday, because MPs have the responsibility to whittle down a current list of 11 to just 2. As I say, we think we'll get down to that 2. Now, right now, if you look at what's happening in terms of public support by Tory MPs, Rishi Sunak is in the lead. Actually, Penny Mordaunt isn't far behind, but there are other candidates, like, for example, Tom Tugendhat, not that far behind again. There will be, I think, I'm going to stick my neck out. I think Rishi Sunak will make it to that runoff over several weeks when party members have to decide. It's the right wing of the Tory party which has got a problem, because there are several candidates if Penny Mordaunt gets through, and I think there is a very good chance of that, and actually I've been saying for some time, I thought that she was the sort of dark horse to be the next Prime Minister. Slightly extraordinary given that most British people have never heard of her and she's a middle-ranking Trade Minister, but she's been planning her case for some time. If she gets through, Rishi Sunak is going to find it a very tough contest indeed.
OK, and you'll be following it every step of the way. Thank you very much indeed, Robert. Now, as the race for number 10 does heat up, as Robert was saying, the country has been sweltering in temperatures above 30 degrees in places. The risk that poses was emphasised by the Met Office today when it issued a rare extreme heat warning for this weekend. Today, Northolt in London recorded the highest temperature in England of 32 degrees Celsius. Wales had its hottest day of the year so far. It hit 28.7 in Cardiff, and temperatures are expected to rise further through the week, with that amber warning issued for extreme heat covering much of England and parts of Wales. The latest warning will come into force on Sunday and could last until early next week.
On Brighton Beach, the scorching summer sun beats down as heat health warnings kicked in across England. The hot weather is set to last into the weekend, with a rare extreme heat warning covering much of England and Wales, now in place from next Sunday. At this care home in Folkestone, they're working hard to keep residents comfortable as temperatures rise.
We tend to keep people under canopies or indoors, particularly during the highest points in the day when it gets really hot around midday.
Warnings are also being issued to people to avoid swimming in dangerous places. The 16-year-old boy died in this abandoned quarry in Apley Bridge in Lancashire on Saturday night. Across the country, people are being urged to think twice as the heatwave takes hold.
We're not the fun police, and I can see the attraction of cool water versus hot weather, but the tidal Thames is a very dangerous stretch of river. People lose their lives on a weekly basis.
On Salisbury Plain, a fire broke out on land used for military training. Fire crews are hopeful that it can be left to burn itself out, but it's another warning of just how dry the ground is in many parts. These train tracks on a bridge in Battersea caught fire early this morning, causing disruption. Network Rail is investigating whether a stray spark lit the wooden sleepers, left dry by the heatwave. As temperatures climbed in Cambridge today, they were trying to get shade however they could. Nearly 3 years ago, the city hit the UK's highest ever recorded temperature with 38.7 degrees Celsius. Forecasters fear that could soon be beaten.
There is a chance that the temperature will go higher than that. So in which case we would call it unprecedented. We would say that we've never seen those kinds of temperatures before. But it's a chance rather than a guarantee at this stage. It's still 6 days away.
This hot spell is only just beginning, and if the forecasts prove correct, much of the country could be in for a long and testing time. Heat kills, and the Met Office insists its warnings need to be heeded. Neil Connery, News at 10, Cambridge.
Now to the crisis in Sri Lanka now, where the country's president has said he will resign after crowds stormed his palatial residence in protest at the dire economic climate. The financial woes stem from Sri Lanka's cash reserves virtually running dry, something the government blames on the pandemic and terror attacks affecting tourism, but which local activists say is due to corruption. The country's foreign debts have rocketed in recent years to £43 billion and left it unable to pay for imports of crucial supplies like food, fuel and medicines. Those shortages have sent the cost of living soaring, with inflation rising to an unbelievable nearly 55%. And according to the UN, more than 60% of households are cutting how much they eat in order to cope.
In Sri Lanka, the queue for petrol no longer lasts for hours. The wait is now measured in days. This is what it looks like when the country runs out of fuel and money. And this is what happens when the people run out of patience.
Yes. How long have you been waiting for petrol? 4 or 5 days. 5 days? Yes, in the queue.
Protesters have stormed the gates of the presidential palace, and from what we saw today, they have now taken over.
We will win because people are united.
This president is not coming back here.
You'll never come. If he come here, our people will kick out him.
The writing is now on the wall for the Sri Lankan regime. The black flag of the protesters now flies here. The new occupants experienced the luxury of a presidential bed. and there have been queues to take a dip in the president's pool.
The fact we, along with these people, can walk through this palace at our leisure tells us power in Sri Lanka no longer lies in the hands of the president, but it's not yet in the hands of the people, because the military still surrounds this place. Heavily armed guards are overseeing this delicate revolution.
Police have already fired tear gas on protesters. They faced down crowds of people furious at the soaring prices and shortages, all made much worse by the Sri Lankan government borrowing heavily from abroad and printing money to fill gaps in the country's finances. It has been a disaster of economic policy, leaving Sri Lanka effectively bankrupt. Those guns are still here, fingers never far from the trigger, but the people tell me they are simply no longer scared.
I'm dying for my country. I'm proud for that thing.
So the fear has gone away for you?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Otherwise, why I'm not here?
Sheer desperation has driven this. With no gas for stoves, people in Sri Lanka now buy wood to cook in the streets. Community kitchens feed those without fuel or food. Dizala Rodrigo has been camped outside this palace since April. Now she's inside the president's old gym.
We don't have a gas cylinder to cook. Even if we have induction electric cookers, we don't have electricity. There's a power cut going on every day. So that's the main reason why I'm here.
Is this the end?
No, this is not. We are waiting until they leave officially. Unless they leave, we are going to stay here and continue.
Sri Lanka's president is now in hiding and has briefed that he'll resign on Wednesday. The people say they'll believe it when they see it. Until then, they stay put and hold on to hope. Peter Smith, News at 10, Colombo.
Here, a 15-year-old boy has been sentenced to at least 13 years in prison for murdering a girl after an argument about a Snapchat video. 12-year-old Ava White was stabbed in Liverpool after a Christmas light switch-on event last November. Her parents described her as their reason for living. The boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons, said it was an accident in self-defense. Now, the travel woes grounding the plans of tens of thousands of people show no sign of going away as the summer holidays approach. Thousands of flights have already been cancelled, but Heathrow Airport warned more may go if it doesn't think the cuts already announced will prevent more disruption. In a taste of what that may look like, around 10,000 passengers got a shock today when 61 flights were axed at short notice.
Planes were taking off from Heathrow today, lucky for those on board, but thousands of others had their plans thrown into chaos as Heathrow cut 60 flights at the last minute. Neil McCoy and his fiancée Victoria had been enjoying a holiday in Barcelona until their flight into Heathrow was cancelled this morning. They were already on board the plane.
Lack of information, just lack of any help of any kind, you know, no offering of said food or water. So it was a diabolical management of the whole situation.
All of this adding more misery to passengers who've already been dealing with major disruption at the airport, with long queues and delays at check-in and security and meltdowns in baggage handling. So far, British Airways alone has cancelled nearly 30,000 flights from its schedules between April and October this year. Today, Heathrow axed 61 flights as the airport feared it couldn't handle expected traveller numbers, affecting around 10,000 passengers.
If we continue to see these kind of last-minute cancellations right into the summer holidays when far more people are going to be travelling than at the moment, then I think there's going to be serious problems.
Staff shortages have left the aviation sector in turmoil as demand rebounds after the pandemic. Today's cut in flights blamed on a shortage of ground handlers.
The hope was that these problems would have been ironed out by the flight cancellations already planned by airlines like BA and EasyJet. The fact that they haven't will be worrying news for anyone booked on a flight this summer.
Right now, no one can promise holidays abroad will happen. Setal Karia, News at 10, Heathrow.
Well, it's not just the airports where the trouble is continuing. More is coming down the tracks on our railways. Today, members of the Train Drivers Union ASLEF at 8 rail companies voted overwhelmingly to strike over pay. It follows nationwide disruption in June when 40,000 rail workers went on strike. In Ukraine, retribution won't come swift for those accused of war crimes. With thousands of incidents being investigated, it will take years for justice to be served, longer without more international support, the prosecutor in charge told us. Across Ukraine, many are simply searching for what answers to happen to their loved ones. We joined one woman on an emotional visit to the spot in Bucha where her husband, a civilian, is said to have been executed by the Russians.
Nina is on a journey.
It's very hard to believe.
A journey no one would ever want to make.
I'm pretty sure he was killed at that place inside from hotel.
The destination is the scene of a mass execution.
I can't feel smell from people who dead and his body still here.
Here, we are told, the Russians killed dozens of people. Among them, her husband, Serhiy, the father of her 2 daughters.
No matter what.
Imagine the courage it takes to confront the awful truth.
Oh my God. Many shooting from head, shoulder, near heart, legs, hand, even on back.
What's it like for you to be back here, his last place where he was alive?
It really hurts. It really hurts to be here and feeling how he stayed alive and just like a few seconds and he dead.
Yeah.
I can't talk. I'm sorry.
It's taken Nina months to discover her husband's fate, and only then when she saw pictures of his body posted on social media.
His eye open when they killed them. From gun, his eye open after death.
But he looked his killers in the eye.
After body dead, his eyes looking at heaven. So it's like that. Sorry.
We shared Nina's story with the woman whose job it is to track down her husband's killers.
Very brave woman, actually. Very strong and brave woman.
In and around Bucha, she tells me, they've identified 36 suspects.
Started to prosecute them.
You know their names, you know their units, you know
Absolutely.
what they did.
Yes.
What is it that you lack and what is it that you need the international community to help you with?
We need more support on the ground. It should be investigators, prosecutors, experts of international humanitarian law, forensic experts, other experts.
The investigation, she warns, will go on long after the war ends. But for Nina, all hope is gone.
Do you think you will ever find the men who are guilty of murdering your husband?
I hope he's dead. It's not possible to find him. It's not only one person, it's many persons. It's very hard. It's hurt me every time when I look this picture.
In Ukraine, the graves are filling faster than the wheels of justice can turn. John Ray, News at 10, Bucha.
The former Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, is to be charged with fraud over an alleged failure to declare overseas assets worth more than £400 million. The charges against the 91-year-old follow a complex and worldwide investigation by HMRC. Now, since arriving from North America in the 19th century, grey squirrels have proven an unpopular addition to our wildlife. Small and furry they may be, but their rapid spread has been disastrous for their red-coated cousins in our woodlands. With their population at nearly 3 million, there may finally be a solution to their prolific procreation: birth control. Nuts as it may sound, trials placing oral contraceptives in hazelnut spread are going well and could be used more widely.
They might not look much like an ecological menace, but the cute grey squirrel causes huge amounts of damage to the British countryside.
We don't object to individual animals. Of course, we love animals, but as a species, they're causing quite a lot of problems.
Introduced from North America in the 1870s, greys carry the squirrel pox virus, which does them no harm, but is fatal to native red squirrels.
People think of squirrels eating nuts, but they'll eat other food as well. So they will eat birds' eggs. They will eat chicks in the nest sometimes if they find them. They'll even find their way into nest boxes sometimes to get at the eggs and the chicks.
The UK population of red squirrels used to be around 3.5 million, but since grey squirrels arrived in the UK, the number of reds has dropped to under 140,000, compared to a current estimate of 2.5 million greys.
Grey squirrels are also a menace to trees. Between April and the end of July, they strip away at the bark, interrupting the sap flow, which causes many of them to die. Some trees like oak, sycamore and beech are so vulnerable to grey squirrels that many foresters simply won't bother planting them.
New research in Yorkshire and Wales has found that oral contraceptives for squirrels are working.
They have to push open a door.
The plan involves luring grey squirrels into feeding boxes using hazelnut spread spiked with contraceptives.
People like grey squirrels, but I guarantee if you saw red squirrels, you would find them even cuter. But also the damage they do, we simply can't just let them go about their business unchecked.
Culls of grey squirrels have long been unsuccessful. The hope is that this non-lethal plan means their red cousins are heading towards a brighter future. Rhys Williams, News at 10.
Now, Monty Norman, the man behind perhaps the most iconic theme tune in British cinema, has died, aged 94. Well, you guessed it, the composer wrote the score for the first James Bond film, 1962's Dr. No. The theme's been used in every one, of course, of the 25 Bond movies, and in his career he also wrote for Western musicals and for singers, including Sir Cliff Richard, and he appeared on variety shows alongside the likes of Benny Hill. And finally, tonight was meant to pose England's toughest test of the Euros group stages. But if they were anxious in their opening win, this evening the Lionesses ran wild, stunning Norway with 6 first-half goals. In the end, it was a record-breaking 8-0, putting them top of the group and securing their place in the quarter-finals. But defeat for Northern Ireland means their time in the tournament may almost be up. Great result for the Lionesses, and that is all we have time for tonight. From me and the rest of the team on News at 10, good night and thank you for watching.
Tomorrow,